Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Chinetsky. Making his glorious return to the podcast is the dashing, the debonair, the devilishly attractive owner of Morphogen Nutrition,
Well, thank
Mr.
you.
Ben Hartman. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Glad to be back. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out where the fuck I'm sitting here. Lights.
And we got the tally for fucks at 1 so far. Let's see how many we can tally today.
It's just the kind of guy that I am. I'm sorry. I make no apologies for it. So
outstanding, man. Well, to suffice it to say, you guys are having a banner year amidst all of the craziness and shit fuckery that is 2020. So,
fuckery, that's a good one there.
It is. What do you attribute the success that y'all had amidst all the turmoil and tribulations of this year?
Oh, that's a good ass question. I think it's a combination of kind of the type of business model that we have and just right time, right place sort of thing, coupled with just my insistence on not failing at anything. I am a stubborn son of a bitch. Pros and cons to that. But man, it's just, there's been no other option, and when you don't give yourself an option to fail, then you can't fail. It's been, like you said, it's been a very pivotal year. We've been exploding for a while now, and we had a little bit of a drop back in March, a little bit in April when COVID first hit. The world didn't know what was going on. People were trying to save money, and then came out of that, and every month just keeps going up. We keep coming out with new stuff. I am very adamant about creating what I want to create this year, and then spending the latter half of the year into next year focusing on some other, some back end things, maybe some branding, some website stuff. We're in the process of purchasing a much larger warehouse and office space. We're bringing on more employees, and my wife quit her job and she's working for the company full time. So there's a lot of things going on. So my priority for the last several months has been creation of everything, basically. And I don't know. I think I'm kind of just figuring out where I fit in, in this whole game. I think I'm just hitting my stride with being comfortable with the way that I create products, the way that I can put stuff out, the way that the brand cohesively ties together.
Mm-hmm.
And it just worked out perfectly with us being direct to consumer. We're not in retail spaces. Retail spaces have taken a major hit this year. And we've been very fortunate, of other people's, misfortune, unfortunately. Gotcha. So, yeah.
Well, you had told me a couple of weeks ago her job. I guess if it's not getting too personal, what did she do before, and how do you expect it to? I mean, I'm sure she's been somewhat involved with the business since y'all got started. But what is it going to be like, working side by side with her every day now for the foreseeable future going?
So she's always been the CFO. She is technically majority owner of the company, and we've talked about that a little bit. It's not anything that we're shy about. When we started the company, we filed her as 51% owner of the company, just in case we ever needed any loans or to apply for any grants or anything, because a female-owned business would be looked at more favorably for such a thing. Thankfully, we never had to go that route, so we always joke that I'm running her business, and now I can't get rid of her, and all these things. She's always had a hand in the pot, making sure that basically that I don't fuck up. But that's been a very small part of overall what the company's done. During this whole COVID thing, she's worked from home anyways this whole time because of the nature of her prior job. And so having her home has been fantastic. And that was kind of a trial period with all this, which is why we expedited her leaving that position. So up until recently, she was technically a controller. So she was an accountant at a pretty large bank, very large, like maybe one of the biggest banks in the world. She worked at the big corporate center here in Columbus. Had a good job. She's been my sugar mama for the last several years. And literally, I mean, as soon as we moved to Columbus 7 years ago, we've been living off of her the entire time so that I could funnel all the money back into the company. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we talked about that last time, but we didn't take any money from the company until our 7-year anniversary. And the only reason, which was almost exactly 2 years ago, and the only reason that I even took a paycheck at that point was because we had talked about eventually purchasing or building a home. We have children, we needed some sort of money. We needed in savings. I needed proof of income. We needed something. And that's the only reason I took anything at all. So having her home, during this whole period, our whole plan was kind of like, in the future. And then it was, 2021. And then it was, January. And then it was October. And then eventually we're just like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, I always people like shit or get off the pot. Right.
Yep.
She's very much the guarded, the reserved, the foundation of everything that we do. We often joke with people that I'm the rocket ship and she's an anchor. And I'm constantly 1,000 miles an hour blasting off. And I've kind of always been that way. And she very much is this very grounded, guarded, very organized, very cautious person. And to the point that it's a perfect balance in our relationship, in the business, and everything that we do. So having her incorporated into more of the things that we've been doing the last few months while she was transitioning out of that job has been big, that I've been able to free up more of my time doing less financial stuff, profit loss stuff, handling purchase orders, following up on employee payroll, all this kind of stuff that I'm frankly just shitty at and inefficient at. And having her take that away freed up my time and my mental equity that I could devote into what the company is and what we hope to become, in the future.
Outstanding. And it seems like not a week or two goes by that you and I will exchange messages, and you'll maybe send me a formula or give me a sneak peek at what's coming out. And so y'all have released a bunch, and I know you still have a lot more in the works for the rest of this year and into 2021.
Yeah.
What is driving the release of these new formulas? Is it something that you personally want to do? Is it something maybe your wife is looking for that she identifies a gap in the lineup, or is it from the consumers they're saying, hey, we want this we want to see the Morphogen Ben spin on this kind of product?
I would say that it's probably 80% me and 20% feedback from whether that's our consumers, whether that's the industry in general. I'm very aware of general trends in the industry. It would be irresponsible not to be. But at the same time, I've always had ideas of what the brand could become. And I've always had these ideas of what products could exist and what ingredients could we incorporate into the line in some capacity. Mm-hmm. And if we already have a very full formula of something that can't be topped, and there's an amazing ingredient that doesn't really fit into that formula or the next one, but it's a very promising thing, it's like, what can I create that I think could be beneficial to the consumer utilizing this ingredient or these, XYZ things. And my brain's going like 1,000 miles an hour all the time. And so some of the ideas I have are absolutely garbage and some are gold. And because there's just so many, every now and then I'm just like it pops into my head and I just can see it before I've even put pen to paper. And, I'll have these like looming ideas for months that I don't really focus on. And then I'll sit down in 1 hour and come up with a whole new product in 1 hour and send it off for quotes pretty rapidly. And almost always I can, even without knowing, and this is very weird, even without knowing the exact raw materials cost on the manufacturing side of things, I can put together a formula and guess within a couple bucks of what I think it might cost to make almost every single time. And I'm not sure how exactly I'm able to do that. I think it's just kind of an intuition thing, being in the industry so long, seeing how these ingredients are used by other companies, kind of having an idea of what other companies might be paying for their products because they're, distribution brands or however things sort of work. And I can just kind of have this like general sense of what could be done. And I feel this tremendous responsibility within me to do it. And I think that a big part of that is obviously what we can bring to the industry, what we can change, the impact that we can have on consumers. But a big part of that is just my own creativity, my own fulfillment. I've always kind of been this mix of an artistic mind and a scientific mind. And if I don't have an outlet for that, then I'm going to go insane. And this has just been a very happy outlet that I've discovered. So.
All right, there's a few avenues I want to go into, so I'm going to see if I can keep us on track with that, because there's a couple ways I want to take what you just said there in a few different directions. Let's start with, instead, you keep an eye on trends in the industry. What are some of the ones that you've noticed in 2020? Let's go good and bad trends that you think have been going so far this year.
I definitely see more positive trends towards the general health and wellness categories, whether that be organ health or gut health or cognitive health, longevity, that kind of stuff. And I think that's fantastic, and I'd like to see more of that in the industry. As I've grown with the brand and my priorities have changed away from competition to the rest of life, I've taken a much greater interest personally in these sorts of things, and so it's nice to see that the industry is kind of also taking note of these things. In terms of negative trends, it feels like there's a lot of like follow the leader sort of thing going on, where I can look at a formula by any number of these 20 companies, and I can pretty much guess which company made that based on how it looks. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing. And especially when you can look at a couple different things and you can see a lot of, I don't want to call it copycatting. That's the wrong way to say it, and that sounds negative. Everybody is aware of what's going on. Everybody is drawing inspiration from everybody else. Right. The science on a lot of these things is relatively stable. So it's like if everybody's using 500 milligrams and that's what the research says, then like if I use 500 milligrams, I'm not copying them. You know what I mean? Exactly. But you see a lot of these like almost like duplicated sort of products, and to me that's very boring. Yes, it could still create a phenomenal product or a dozen phenomenal products that all kind of match each other. But to me, that's a boring way to do things. And as a formulator, again, this intrinsic thing, to me, it's like I take that as a personal challenge that can be deconstructed and then rebuilt in a more creative way. I don't want to even say a better way, in a more creative way.
Yeah. Okay. With that, well, one of the newer products you've released is MorphoPump, where it's going to be. So how do you, I guess, from a formulator standpoint and then as a brand owner standpoint, how do you get information the consumer saying, hey, you've got Alphagen, you've got Volugen, and now you've got MorphoPump. So, I mean, is it safe to stack all three? What holes did you see in either of those other two pre-workouts that you were looking to address? And then was there a real desire for the capsule form of it versus a powder form?
So the desire for me it's more of a curiosity that I've always had. And I've seen, there's been tablet or capsule pump products for 20 years. I mean, we're talking like the old BSN nitrix, sort of the horse pills that Ronnie Coleman was taking. So this is not a generally novel product category. I think it's something that's had a resurgence in the last year, where companies are coming out with things that are a little more creative, and I really enjoy what I'm seeing by some of these companies. It was the thing where Alphagen and Volugen have these pump components that I don't think lacks anything, and feedback would kind of agree with me on that. Mm-hmm. It's a matter of what application can these other ingredients provide outside of those two, products. Outside of Alphagen and Volugen, what can I do the rest of the day? What can I do with different metabolic pathways, with different doses, with different goals? And can it be done? And can it be done in a way that complements those formulas if somebody wants to stack them? Can it be incorporated into a health stack? And is it something that can be produced, can be sold, that people like? There's a whole lot of things involved here. Because we've been growing so much and we have, certainly a greater amount of revenue coming in, I get to play a little bit. It's like there's less risk now in creating a new product and wondering if it's going to be a hit or not than there was 3 years ago, where now I'm like, fuck it, let's see how it goes. And if it takes off, great. And if it doesn't, we're going to sell, we'll sell it eventually. And I'll either discontinue it or just leave it be like a bottom performer, and then I don't stress out about it all that much. But if I think that it's something that can be recognized as something unique, something usable, then I feel, again, that responsibility, like I have to create it.
Yeah. Is there any concern, I guess, when you're specifically of causing hypotension, like low blood pressure or anything like that? Or?
That's on the label for MorphoPump. It says to be careful stacking it with any other blood flow, supplements, medications. It says start light on there. It's right there. Of course, nobody ever reads the fucking directions of a product label.
Of course not.
Huge pet peeves. We put a ton of information out. We have all this, every ingredient's broken down on the website. We have all this science. We have all these dosing, and people message me all day long. Hey man, how should I take this? And I go, well, follow the label directions. And they go, yeah, but how would you do it? I go, I wrote the label directions. I would follow the label directions. Yeah. So
double scoop everything. That's the
yeah,
answer.
12 cap per pump with a double scoop Volugen, and have a bathroom nearby because you're definitely going to poop your pants for sure.
Now you've got a huge freaking dose of horny goatweed extract in there, which is standardized for Icarin. Usually, I mean, we see this like pixie dusted in there. So,
Yep.
is this kind of like the middle finger to all epimedium supplements in the market?
A little bit. Here's the thing. I don't think that they are bad. I think that things can be improved upon. And when I was looking through some of the epimedium research, and they're comparing it to, pharmaceutical PDE5 inhibitors.
Yeah.
There's not an exact dosing sort of comparison, but there's a general idea of how much, this one might be sort of equal to so much of this. And that's kind of how I approached it was, okay, if somebody's taking a 25 milligram Cialis and going into the gym, or if they're taking that for blood pressure health or for whatever it might be, if the research kind of has a general trend of, one part of this equals 10 parts of this, then I'll just use 10 parts of this. And that's kind of how I did it. That ingredient is more than half of the cost of the entire product. Wow. And so, and could I have left that out and it still would have been stellar? Absolutely. But that was the first one that I was like, I got to put this in something. It doesn't belong in Volugen. It doesn't belong in Alphagen. The dosing just of that alone would drive the cost of those into an impossible range to manufacture. But can it be the flagship ingredient in a new standalone product? And then what else can complement that? And then it just, filling in gaps, filling in pieces of the puzzle.
Outstanding. What is your personal pre-workout stack? Do you go with all three, or do you just kind of rotate between?
No, I'm very consistent. Scoop of each in a full shaker of water, and I usually will do two to three pump with that, depending on what I'm training. If I'm doing legs, I'm not going to take three of those. If I'm doing arms, I'll take three, sometimes even four. On a general day, I always take two MorphoPump first thing. And so I have this ridiculous looking, it's not even a pill box, it's a fucking button box. But I have it all, organized, and I have a morning dose of stuff, a night dose of stuff, and then this middle row is like ambiguous, throughout the day sort of thing. And so I always have two pump down here, two pump up here, and then in the middle of the day, depending on if I'm fitting or not, is where that dosing comes in with that. So the way that I usually recommend for people is take two of them, twice a day, spaced apart 12 hours, and then on days you train, throw another two in with your pre-workout.
Yeah. Would you almost, since, blood flow is important to so many things, cognitive function, physical performance, even recovery, could you possibly position MorphoPump as almost like a muscle builder or like a recovery agent?
I mean, it could be positioned as just about anything. When we were figuring out what verbiage to put on the label and, how we were going to, I don't even want to say market it, but just, tell people about it. Yeah. I think in terms of just vascular health in general. What does that lead to? And there's a number of things that it could lead to, but I don't want to say it's, blood flow muscle builder, blood flow, blood pressure, something. There's a million things. So I just kind of kept it as a general, vascular health, blood flow product. Here's what blood flow could help with. And the fact that it is able to be taken over the course of a day permits those benefits in a much more tangible way, as opposed to like shotgunning a dose of 6 and getting this flush sort of sensation and then having that kind of trickle down the rest of the day. I like the idea of it being staggered apart over the course of a day for those benefits, compared to people go, what should I take pre-workout, Volugen or pump? I'm like, Volugen, because that is a pre-workout. Pump is not a pre-workout. Part of the dose can be used then, but that's not what it is.
And that's one thing I guess I've wondered with ingredients and dosing for certain things. Like, we know there's a threshold dose in order to get some kind of tangible, acute, real world effect from it. Whereas other things, you could take it multiple times throughout the day, and I guess at the end of the day, you'll have accumulated enough to where you'll get the effects of that. You think that's more of a dose dependent thing or an ingredient specific thing, where it's not. So if you really want to get like a huge boost of energy, you're going to take 400 milligrams of caffeine right out of the go.
50 milligrams every 2 hours over it. Yeah,
you're going to do that. So where with some of these blood flow ingredients, do we need to hit a threshold dose, or if I took 2 grams of citrulline every couple of hours, will I get the same effect as taking 6 grams of it at once?
I think there's merit in both applications, and I think it depends on what you're trying to do. Because citrulline is not just a blood flow agent, because it also has to do with ammonia clearance and performance in general, having a bolus dose pre-workout to me makes more sense. Are there benefits to stringing that dose out over the course of the day? I would hedge my bet on yes, absolutely. But most people aren't going to do that with a standalone citrulline supplement or even take their pre-workout in small doses over the day. I mean, somebody very well could take Volugen, take half a scoop twice a day and confer a ton of benefits from that. But people aren't going to do that with a pre-workout powdered sort of product. And that's part of the reason that I came up with a capsule product, is because people can do that much more easily.
Perfect. Let's transition now to MorphoBrain, which features one of the industry's newest ingredients in Dynamite. What has been your personal experiences on it? I wrote an article for the listeners out there that they can go check out, like a full detailed explainer on what the hell this thing does. But essentially, it's a catechol O-methyl transferase inhibitor, so it'll prolong the lifespan of dopamine and its subsequent neurotransmitters in the body, leading to enhanced euphoria, focus, motivation, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So,
so basically in that, so we had MorphoBrain, super popular. Mm-hmm. We had some, I'll say, questionable ingredients in there where I knew in creating that was going to be the first product for us that was ever sort of this, I don't even want to say gray area. That sounds so shitty. You know what I mean? It's like these products were not on any lists. They weren't banned. Nothing was whatever. Well-studied ingredients, but they were ingredients that not a lot of companies use due to risk or insurance or price or whatever it might be, right? And I said, okay, I think that there's benefit to these ingredients. Let's do this. And that first formula was amazing. The problem with that formula, though, is that some people couldn't manage the proper application of that formula. So some people couldn't take 6 capsules in a day because their blood pressure would skyrocket. Mm-hmm. So 4 of the other ingredients you don't get the full dose of because you're toggling down on the one that affects 10% of the population. So that was always in the back of my mind as something that, like, okay, maybe this doesn't have as broad reaching of an application for people as I would like it to be, but I think it's interesting, and I think that there's benefit to it. But then when those things got flagged a little bit as potential problematic ingredients, there was always rumor that they were going to get banned eventually. I'm like, you know what? I can make a better product that doesn't have these contraindication issues, that stacks better with caffeine or other stimulants, that stacks with a pre-workout, that stacks with your cup of coffee in the morning. But how do I get there? And I had been researching Dynamite and the parent, the non-trademark name of Dynamite for a while anyways. And I was intrigued by it. And then it's like, oh, this is this new industry thing. And we were kind of neck and neck with another company and kind of finding it, I guess. I'm fairly confident that we were the second company in all of North America that released it to the market, and we were close. We were very close to being the first, and they released theirs like 3 weeks before we did. And that was more supply chain issue because they had purchased it before I had, for our manufacturer. So, yeah. But I think it's a very complementary ingredient. I think the synergy that it offers, not just within the formula, but also with other, like I said, your cup of coffee in the morning or your other cognitive boosters that you take, if you want stimulants, if you want something a little more hardcore like adrafinol, or if somebody uses a pharmaceutical like modafinil or Adderall or Vyvanse or whatever, I wanted something that was a little more calm, that was complementary, that had safety standards, published data, lots of peer-reviewed type stuff, and that one just really stuck out. And when I was looking at the doses on that, I go, okay, I can replace almost milligram for milligram these with this in the same amount of caps and the same thing, and the total manufacturing costs ended up going up like $1, I think, for us, which to me is irrelevant, right? Because we're not this major distribution model, so I'm not selling 100,000 units anyways and squabbling over $1 a unit. That doesn't matter to me. So we did it, and feedback's been fantastic.
How
Absolutely.
would you, in your personal experience with just Dynamite on its own, how would you characterize that for the listeners that may not have been exposed to the ingredient yet or used it
Yeah.
themselves or tried any products?
Yeah. So I had a ton of it in bulk that I was using for a while in varying, 100 milligrams, 200, 500. I was even using, 1,000 milligrams, 2,000 milligrams a couple times just to see what it would do. I used it by itself. I used it in conjunction with caffeine. I added it to my pre-workout. I was playing around quite a bit with it. And the best way that I can describe it is smooth, where, like you said, the dopamine release, the drive, the motivation to do things, the reward is there, but the stimulatory effect that you get from other dopamine agonists is not there. So you're not getting a lot of this. It's just
Yeah.
very, very kind of like, this tunnel focus sort of sensation, very smooth.
Yeah.
And then when you stack it with other things, I noticed that there wasn't as much of this. Um, I don't even want to say jitteriness. There wasn't as much of this like fragmented, sense of you know task appropriation that sometimes you can get with stimulants, where they're supposed to help you focus, and sometimes you're hyped up and you just can't quite zero it in. And I found that helped quite a bit with that effect when I combined it with other stimulants. I'm like, all right, so we found something fucking dope here. Let's do it. Let's see how it complements everything and go. So
Yeah, that's what I'll find. I'm glad you mentioned that with regard to stimulants because, by and large, I'm not a huge stim guy. I mean, I can handle high stims, but on a day-to-day basis, I don't need a lot to be productive or something. And I find that every now and then I'll either try a nootropic or, I'll be sipping on a pre-workout as I'm getting ready to go train and I'm doing some work while I'm waiting for it, hopefully kick in. And you described it to a T, like you get the burst and then you start doing all of these different things and you're not actually doing anything, but you're opening up a bunch of different
yeah,
browser
yeah.
tabs, or if I'm trying to research something for an article, I'll have 8 different journal articles up and I'm thinking, wait, fuck, I haven't done anything yet. I mean, I've got all these tabs open, but I haven't actually outlined an
You
article
feel
or anything.
busy and you feel like you're working, but you're not as efficient and as productive. And I think people miss the mark with the balance of ingredients, and that's where something like theanine comes into play. Obviously, theanine has become very controversial in the pre-workout category in the last year because of Justin. Not just
Yeah, I've had a little part to play in that too. I bash the shit out of that
a
ingredient in
bunch of people,
pre-workouts all the
and
time.
I understand the category of that and why people would not want that in there, which is why we are hoping to release Maxogen here in the near future. But when you're looking at the actual output of what you're trying to accomplish, the balance of these things almost always produces a better end result. Where, yeah, it doesn't punch you in the fucking face with this, thing. But the goal is not to do this. The goal is to perform better. And you don't perform better at the highest end of arousal. It's like this bell curve. It's like add arousal and you perform better. Then you keep adding arousal and your performance goes down. And so I think people miss the mark on the stimulants and forget the complementary ingredients.
Mhm. What are your thoughts on BHB salts for not for performance because I've read enough of the exercise data on it. I'm not a big believer in that in any whether you're keto adapted or not.
Nope, me either.
But from a cognitive or a productivity standpoint, how do you feel those? Do you think those belong in a nootropic
Do I think they belong in one?
or
No.
have utility? I guess have you experimented with any of
Oh,
them?
absolutely, I have. Yeah. For the price, for the application, the way that people need to use them, do I think it's worth it for most people? No, I don't. Um, I haven't used them in a long time. If I had a bunch, would I use them? Sure. What the hell? Do I notice much of it? Not necessarily. Like you said, in terms of the performance, we know that they impair glucose uptake, glucose utilization during exercise. Well, unless you're keto adapted, that's going to be the same way in your brain, right?
Right.
So if you're drinking them for this cognitive enhancement, but your brain is still relying on glucose, which it always will, I don't see how adding that to an already well-fed brain is going to drastically increase the end result compared to the price. Again, it's cost benefit, right? The amount of money that goes into that product, the amount of the dose that you have to use, the inability of a company to properly flavor it, to store it, it's just a little problematic. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't think it's way up on the list of things that people should prioritize.
Mhm. I notice a crash off of those things. Like for the first hour or two, I'll feel like this electric buzz going on where I feel super energized. And like an hour or so after that, I mean, I feel flat. Like it's been a nasty crash off of pre-workout. And I never get a crash off of pre-workout, whether it's 100 milligrams of caffeine or like 500 milligrams and all like DMHA and all the other shit that companies will throw in there. I don't crash off of that, but with BHB salts, and I can't figure out what it is, but whenever I guess my body finishes metabolizing it or something, I
Yeah.
feel super duper flat.
I would have to, and I don't know for certain, I haven't poured into that stuff in a long time, but I would have to guess that it has something to do with glucose utilization as a fuel source, and you get brain fog. It's like you're inducing this keto flu on purpose. I don't understand. Yeah, unless you're specifically keto adapted, I'm not entirely sure why you would want to do that.
Yeah, or even if you are keto adapted, I think that's even they have less utility then because then you're down regulating your body's own production of
Yeah,
them.
why would I consume more? And the funny thing is too, is you see these products that are like, dieters, whatever, whatever they call them. When you're deep in contest prep or deep in dieting and your calories are super low, drink this and you'll feel better. Well, no fucking shit. It has calories. You don't have
Exactly.
calories in them. Nobody lists that because it's not legally, technically a fat, per the FDA, nutrition panels. But you're ingesting calories. No shit. Oh, your body's starving for fuel and you're mildly producing ketones because you're teetering on this, level of ketosis due to your diet, and you're adding calories from a potential, fuel source in this situation. Of course, you feel better. You'd feel better if you ate a spoonful of peanut butter too.
Well put, man. Well put. Which of the most recent products I guess y'all have released since the beginning of 2020 has resounded, I guess, or gone over the best or from sales?
That's a good question. In terms of the sales data, I don't have a clue because I'm really bad at looking at that stuff. Based on feedback, I would say it's split equally between Thermogen and Adaptogen, and it depends on. It's like this whole opposite end of the spectrum. It's like this Thermogen is a very intense, very specific product that not everybody can benefit from or tolerate it as well as others. Whereas Adaptogen is kind of like an overall product that I think everybody could benefit from. But those people tend to not be as hardcore and as prolific as the Thermogen type of people. But I would say the amount of feedback that I've gotten has been overwhelmingly positive on both of those. Not coincidentally, those are two products that you absolutely feel a difference compared to, an amino acid product or a testosterone thing or whatever. Those are things that are very like pre-workouts you feel immediately.
Right.
Immediately. Any sort of cognitive boosters or adaptogens, if you have the requirement for those things or can benefit from them, you absolutely notice a benefit relatively quickly, and you're like, oh fuck yeah, this thing works.
With Thermogen, so you've got the 2.5 milligrams of alpha yohimbine in there, and you've also got tyrosine. And there was some, I remember back on the probably it was almost 5 or 10 years ago, they were always talking about this cheesing effect with combining tyrosine and yohimbine alkaloids, where you get this really super edgy feeling. Have y'all gotten any kind of anecdotal reports of this?
Some people are always going to get that from any alpha antagonists. Some people. I think, if I had to pick, I would pick alpha yohimbine over regular yohimbine any day of the week. Regular yohimbine HCl, I think, is, me personally, the absolute worst ingredient in the entire industry. I think it is literally the worst ingredient in the entire industry. It causes so many side effects at such a low dose, and 50% of the people can't tolerate it at all. And it's cheap, and there's always rumors of this, the purity issues and all these sorts of things. I'm like,
right.
But it's cheap and it lights people up and you feel it. So companies put it in there. Companies putting it in pre-workouts and shit, I think is the dumbest shit ever. I understand that it has some minor vasodilation benefits and some minor, very, very minor, maybe, I don't even want to say euphoria, but focus cognitive enhancement benefits. But fuck, for the amount of drawbacks you get from any amount of noticeable dosing on a large majority of the population, I think it's almost irresponsible to put it in a formula like that. Versus something like Thermogen is a pre-workout, but it is not a pre-workout. It is a pre-cardio product, and the goal with that product is in and out quickly, provide fat loss effects, provide performance benefits for the cardio, but it's ultimately a motivation, sort of like a brief high sort of product.
Yeah.
Some people are going to get a little edgy from it, and I don't think that has anything to do with the tyrosine. It has everything to do with the alpha antagonists, and people need to slowly titrate up on their dose on those and not fuck the dose up. And please, for the love of God, read the fucking directions of the product. But yeah, I mean, it's not for everyone. I know it's not for everyone. I personally don't love it because I react very poorly to regular euhinbine in general. Alpha doesn't affect me nearly as bad, but I can still tell, and I don't particularly enjoy whatever I'm experiencing. It's not bad. It's just not a thing that I'm super into. But I know people that are obsessed with it and they react very positively to it. And so I do think there's application for that in a product like that. If somebody wants pre-cardio boost without that, drink Alphagen, 100%. Is it going to be as good for fat loss directly? No. But if you're doing it for the motivational aspect, you still get that dopamine release. You still get the beta adrenergic stimulation from the stimulants. You still get all these sorts of things, but you don't have that aspect of it.
Gotcha. In Thermogen, you've got a massive dose of, obviously everything is dose, but I mean, the one that jumps out to me is the 1,500 milligrams of yerba mate. Usually you see that at like 200 to 400 milligrams, and I'm being generous for that. Usually it's like pixie dusted into stim blends with that. So, what about that ingredient, made it a worthy inclusion in Thermogen?
There's plenty of evidence to suggest that it's comparable, if not better, to any number of tea extracts with fat loss. Some of that is going to be the trace amines and other things in there that make you feel good. It was a collective of all that. Again, I wanted it to, and I don't even want to say a high, but I'll say it, whatever. I wanted people to take it and be like, fuck yeah, I feel fucking good. Let's go do cardio. And then an hour later have it be done and gone and they can start their day. And that was the whole purpose of that product. Yeah. That ingredient, whether it's negligible or not, I think has more benefits in that regard than just putting in a tea extract. And when you're looking at the dosing and the type of extracts and all that kind of stuff, that's just what made sense, and it fit into the formula, and we could afford it, and fuck it, there we go, there it is.
Is there any caffeine content that's in addition to the 400 milligrams of caffeine citrate?
So per full serving, there's 225 milligrams of total caffeine, and that's from the amount that's in everything else on a standardized or an average amount that comes from everything else. I don't think it's worth stressing out about too much. But for me, I wanted to include it on the label, whereas other companies I don't think necessarily worry about that sort of thing. And I don't know if it even matters. But again, I felt compelled to do so. The one thing that I found interesting is the caffeine citrate at that dose and the percentage. So many people are like, so there's 400 milligrams of caffeine. And I'm going,
read the fucking label.
First of all, 50%. I understand that can be confusing, but it's on the website and it explains how many milligrams of active caffeine and it explains why we use it. And is that splitting hairs? Yes. Do I care if it's splitting hairs? No. Because if it might make the formula better, then why wouldn't I do that? Yeah. I mean, I'm a big evidence guy. I'm a big practical application of the evidence and being able to use it, apply it. And there's like this balance between the two. But I will fully admit that there are a number of ingredients across our line that probably could be pulled from the formula, and I don't know if anybody's actually going to notice that they're gone. Mm-hmm. If they might make it better, then again, I have this responsibility that I have to put it in there. I have to. And overwhelmingly, the feedback that we get from these people is that they notice this product much, much more. And is it because I included that ingredient? Not necessarily, but it's certainly the synergy of everything that's in there. And it's this again, the blending of art and science in the way that I've created the product has resulted in something that is tangible and noticeable as an end result.
Gotcha. Let's shift gears to Adaptogen. First off, I'm not even sure how y'all were able to pull off the name Adaptogen because it seems like somebody would have used that product name by now, or is it just that it can't be trademarked and anybody can use that name? Common word?
Yeah, well, so common word. So the trademarking thing is very interesting, especially when you're looking at product names. how many fat burners are called Burn on the market, right?
Word.
There's a number of pre-workouts called Fury from different brands. Um, common words, tough, right? Adaptogen is a common word, and it also fits in with the Gen theme of how we name our powder products, and it also fits in with what the product actually does. It is, and I go, okay, there we go.
Is there, I guess, all right, so we've got in there, we've got 3 types of mushrooms. We've got cordyceps, lion's mane, reishi. We've got holy basil extract. We've got bovine glandular tissue. We've got phosphatidylcholine, magnolia bark extract, Siberian ginseng, ubiquinol, neurofactor. Now you've got bacopa, which is a common adaptogen, in another product. You've also got rhodiola, I believe, in a different one. And
yeah.
And then, so the 3 common ones that we always look at are like bacopa, rhodiola, and ashwagandha. And I find it, very, very, kind of tongue in cheek that you've avoided all 3 of those.
Yep. We had a number of people that are like, adaptogen with no ashwagandha? That doesn't make sense. And I'm like, that's not the only one. And I get it. I considered making a product that has all that in there, but we have those ingredients across the line. And I was looking at more specific benefits with these ingredients than sort of the overreaching, because there's a number of benefits for ashwagandha outside of their adaptogenic qualities. The same thing with rhodiola, especially with rhodiola from a cognitive enhancement standpoint, and Volugen. And when stacked with alphagen, it has some mild MAOI effects, which can enhance the stimulatory effects of the alphagen. I mean, there's this, again, the synergy and kind of this marriage of how things fit together. And adaptogen started, honestly, for me, it started as a number of these ingredients I was very intrigued by. I didn't see the proper application in putting them across the line in different products, either because of utility or because of price. And all these people are putting this, ambiguous mushroom powder in their coffee in the morning. That's not, nobody knows the dose or the standardization, and it's just mushroom that costs them $1. And I'm like, okay, so like, what can be done, right? What can be done? And the way that we created the product was I was envisioning people literally doing one of 2 things: mixing it with their coffee in the morning, or mixing it in a post-workout meal, in their shake, in their oatmeal, and whatever they're doing. And that's how I envisioned that product working. And that seems to be the way that people have been utilizing it.
Yeah, I'm surprised you were able to pull off a powdered form of this, given how many botanicals that are in there. Because I mean, if anybody that's tasted raw mushroom powder before, it tastes almost like unbaked bread dough or something. But then all of the other stuff that you have going on in there, I imagine that took a very good while to flavor properly.
I actually had this conversation about an hour ago with one of our employees. Every now and then somebody's like, hey man, this is really good, but it's way too sweet. It's way too sweet to put it in my coffee. I need to dilute it. Can you make it less sweet? And I said, no, because it literally is a bunch of ground up dirt, glands, and bark. We had to use all the nice tasting synthetic, ingredients and, natural and artificial sweeteners, flavors, all that kind of stuff. The thing with the mushrooms is they're interesting, where I have found that any tart sort of flavors, even though tart generally masks a lot of stuff, for some reason with the mushrooms, there's not that complementary sort of palate effect. And it's like, fuck, this lemon tastes like fucking, like muddy lemon, or like a tea lemon. Like tea has that kind of like that earthy sort of essence to it. But when you do it in something like a chocolate or vanilla, it kind of almost smooths it all out a little bit. It's no different than a dairy-based protein powder. Very rare do we see a tart sort of dairy protein. You might see like strawberries and cream or something, smooth and creamy, but like you don't see lemonade in a whey protein powder, because it's going to taste like lemon milk.
Yeah, it's gross.
Inherently, yes. And so, are we going to come out with adaptogen in a peach rings flavor? Fuck no, we're not. That's impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, let's so with the products, and last thing I'll say on adaptogen before moving on to the next topic is that you've got 100 milligrams of a nootropic ingredient that is just a wonderful ingredient. It's a personal favorite of mine, neurofactor. That stuff is awesome, and it gives you almost like a stimulatory effect. I guess similar to what Dynamite does. It just awakens you cognitively, and but it's subtle, but I just noticed it's strong.
Yeah, it's not this like keep me up all night sort of thing. It's very much like it makes your brain work on a more focused level.
Yep.
I've actually played around with it at night as well, and I've found that for me, it doesn't disrupt sleep at all because it's not inherently stimulatory for me.
Yeah.
Um, I find a little bit better dreaming, almost like lucid dreaming sort of situation. And there is some research to suggest that some nootropics that are, could be taken at night, even something as simple as like a choline source, can enhance lucid dreaming or, the dream state in general. Do I think everybody should take it right before bed? Not necessarily. Everybody's got to figure out what works for them. I personally don't find it to be inherently stimulatory in the traditional sense of a stimulant.
Yeah.
And so some people go, if that ramps you up and these ramp you down, and I go, that's very black and white on paper. Is it going to ramp you up like 100 milligrams of caffeine? No. And everybody can tolerate 100 milligrams of caffeine. So to me, it's not an issue worth worrying about.
Right. With that, all right, so along the lines of new ingredients, every week, every other week, we're bombarded by new ingredients, and whether it's some new form of something that we've already used, like glucovantage came out, dihydroberberine is a riff on berberine. We're always seeing these other new trademark forms, or perhaps improved bioavailability forms of older generic extracts that we've seen throughout the industry for years' use. As a brand owner, how much evidence do you need to see before you consider some of these new ingredients, even though they may be trendy? Maybe you want to tap the brakes and not be one of the early adopters of an ingredient.
Yeah, so that's always an interesting question. I'm always intrigued by it, as everybody is. That's the whole point in coming out with something new and shiny. Oh, look, a new thing.
Yeah.
As a brand owner and as a formulator, I have to look at, again, the totality of everything. And I look at something like, dihydroberberine. The research suggests that it's probably a little better than regular berberine. We also know that the dosing can be lower. The bioavailability is a little bit higher. But the cost is fucking ridiculous, right? And so if I can put 1,000 milligrams of berberine in a product that also is stacked to the gills, something like MorphoPrime, and afford to make it and sell it, that's going to confer more benefits to the consumer than throwing dihydroberberine in there and cutting 3 ingredients to change the cost. And the net effect is not any better.
Right.
So I think I see more utility in something like that as a flagship ingredient in a standalone product. If somebody wants to, make a GDA that has 4 ingredients, put that one in there, and then, put a couple, oddballs in there. It's going to work because that ingredient's good. But I think the overall effect of a product is much more important than the individual effect of every single ingredient in there. And that's, again, kind of the mix of art and science comes into play here, where I love the science and I love the evidence and I love the dosing, and putting one against the other, if this one goes, this much, then this is the better choice. But if I can put more of this one in here for the same cost, then the net effect is better. And so I always look into these things, but there's never an immediate rush to do it. If the cost of something like that is not overwhelming to add to the formula, and there might be some sort of synergistic benefit, I'm totally fine with playing with it and and potentially putting it in a formula that isn't going to do anything. I don't know. It might. An example of that is S7. We have S7 in Hexogen, and I played with it by itself in a number of dosages. I don't notice a ton, but I have talked to a number of people that swear they notice it. No different than people that swear by Vaso 6. And there's a ton of evidence, and that whole movement is growing, and I love it. But as a standalone, gram for gram, are you going to notice a huge difference? I'm not so sure about that, but because the dose is so small and the price wasn't that much, to add that to a product as an adjunct on an already stacked formula that does so many other things, it's not a pump product, right?
Yeah.
So doing that doesn't change anything, with the end result of the product in any negative sense. It doesn't change the price. It doesn't change the value to the consumer. It's not the flagship part of that. Would I make a product that's like 4 ingredients and has S7 as one of the 4? No.
Right. No. Yeah, and that's where I would agree. I mean, I've been fairly adamant and vocal about how much I don't like S7.
I know, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah, that's the puppy that I like to kick every week on the podcast, it seems. And because you also, you've put glutamine in a product too, and it's one of those ingredients. And I agree with your mindset of, well, hey, it's not doing anything negative, and if it's not really adding to the cost of something, then why not, let's throw it in there. Maybe it'll provide some tangible benefit. If not, it's a wash either way. It's not going to do anything bad.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Synthogen has glutamine, and I swore I would never put it in there. I swore I would never use it in anything.
Yeah,
there were so many people begging for it that it doesn't harm. Again, it doesn't harm anything. The net cost to me is less than $1 a unit, and because again we're not crazy distribution, to add 50 cents to a SKU for me doesn't. I don't care. It literally does not bother me whatsoever. Versus these other companies that every 5 cents is like tens of thousands of dollars because of the way their business model works. So I'm not pressured by that sort of thing. There might be some benefits with hydration, glycogen replenishment, some negligible benefits on gut health. If a person has that sort of need, it fits into that product nicely. It mixes with the flavor and the texture of the product. It made sense. If I was ever going to do it, it had to make sense, to go in there. So.
Yeah, as long as it's an ancillary inclusion, you're not trying to say, this is, the be all end all God's gift to, supplementation. That's why we're putting this ingredient in here. You're trying to make it like the hallmark feature of it.
Yeah, no.
Just from a personal standpoint.
Yeah, it's way down there.
Yeah. And I guess I agree with you that when the new ingredients come out, I'm excited. I'm like everybody else. I want to see innovation in the industry. I want to see new things being brought because I'm tired of the 300 milligrams caffeine, 6 milligrams 6 grams of citrulline, 3.2 beta alanine, all that.
It's boring.
So I love seeing new ingredients. At the same time, every time a new ingredient comes out and it's heralded as the next best thing, I feel like I'm also like the crotchety old man that's saying, we don't have any long-term human data on this. We've got cell cultures and we've got rat studies. That's all we have on this. So, let's tap the brakes on everything. So I want to be optimistic and excited for ingredients, but I find myself as time goes on being more and more skeptical and trying to be like the voice of reason.
When these ingredients come out as a business endeavor and they're heavily marketed and there's a heavy price tag associated with that, and it's again this shiny new toy. God, there's a number. I mean, there's a million fucking ingredients that are out. And people are like, are you going to put this in there and this in there and this in there? I'm like, nope. And they're like, why not? You don't love it? I go, not really. I mean, I don't hate it. I've had a number of people ask me about Maxogen, and they've named a number of these trademarked ingredients. Is that going to be in there? Is that going to be in there? Is that? I go, no. And they go, why? I go, because that ingredient costs $5 for that one ingredient in that jug, and I'm not convinced that it does much of anything.
Yeah. If
it was $1, I'd put it in. $5, and you want me to put 3 of these ingredients in there? There's no room for the rest of the formula. I mean, nobody can even create it at that point. It would cost $40 to make, and it would never exist. So
yeah.
I
want to rewind real quick and get your thoughts on something about. All right, so Dynamite we talked about earlier, and you said it's kind of like a calm, controlled energy that you feel locked in. How would you compose or compare it to something like some of the other caffeine light ingredients we've seen, like Dynamine, TeaCrine, things like that? Is it comparable? Is it different feeling? Do you think?
It's not. So we have TeaCrine and Dynamine in Alphagen with caffeine. Again, that's a little controversial. Some people love it, some people don't. Which is why we're branching into the Maxogen realm to see what we can play with there. On paper, it makes sense. Anecdotally, a majority of people like the overall effect of what it does. Again, it's a right amount of stimulation with the end result being performance, whether that's cognitive performance, physical performance, mental well-being, whatever it might be. Alphagen is overwhelmingly known as this no crash, stable, happy zone sort of product. And I think it's the whole formula. But I think a big part of it is the synergy between those ingredients. And because we didn't use shitty doses of the TeaCrine and Dynamine, which so many companies do, the TeaCrine and Dynamine are interesting because if you're looking at hardcore, super, research evidence, it's questionable, especially with like TeaCrine. If the dose is not substantially high enough, it's going to be sedative.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, and so why would you put 25 or 50 milligrams in a product with caffeine? It might feel okay, but to me that doesn't create the balance that something like a theanine in caffeine, where it's not inherently sedatory, Whereas 25 milligrams of TeaCrine is going to act like a sedative. So if you're going to put it in there, put the fucking dose in there that is at least the minimum amount that's, to be synergistic with the caffeine, and then try it and see what the end result is. We tried it. We had a number of people try it. That's why we created that sort of thing. I definitely, as standalones, I get a little bit more of a stimulatory effect from both of those. Again, Dynamite, I don't get the same sort of this enhanced respiration and this enhanced sort of thing. For me, it's very much like I feel it almost like behind my eyes, like I'm like this, versus like this physical sort of thing that I get from stimulants, where it's not just this heady sort of feeling. It's very much like I said, the increased respiration, or I feel my blood pumping a little bit more, I feel hot, or I feel, whatever. I don't get that from Dynamite at all. TeaCrine, a little bit. That one to me feels a little bit more like Dynamite. Dynamine is definitely a little more of a punch for sure. And that's why I think the marriage of those three ingredients, the caffeine, the Dynamine, and the TeaCrine and Alphagen, I think they complement each other very nicely in something like that. From a nootropic standpoint, would Dynamite add to that? Absolutely. But I didn't want to make a nootropic product specifically that was based on stimulants, because then how do you customize that? And how do you ensure that you have the right amount of general brain health ingredients, something like Bacopa, that needs to be at dose in, stable amounts over the course of time, with some regularity? How do you toggle that if you put 200 milligrams of caffeine in a nootropic? Like, to me, that feels like a lazy way out of making a nootropic. Let's put 3 stimulants in it. Well, just fucking have a half scoop of pre-workout then. If you're going to do that, put something that actually is great for the brain as a standalone brain product, and not just stims, which could go in any direction, right?
Agreed.
I think stims are a cheap out for most product category, pre-workout, fat burner, nootropic. Like, Jesus Christ, stims are not that cool. Especially the caffeine-based stims are just not that cool, and they're cheap, and we know they work, and we know the dose, and just put them where they belong and let them be, and then focus on the rest of the formulas.
Agreed. Yeah, I think over-reliance on stims is the hallmark of a lazy formulator.
Absolutely.
Or somebody that's just relying, I guess, on the contract manufacturer to do their formulations for them or something like that. Be that what it may.
Yeah,
you teased a few Instagram. I don't know if you want to, how much you can divulge or what you want to divulge.
Talk about whatever you want to talk about.
What I guess what were you previewing, and what is in the works?
So there's a lot of things in the works. If you're looking at the entire R&D process from initial idea to bringing it to market, there's 20 things on this spectrum. Some of them are much closer to being an actual thing, and some are still kind of in the conceptual phase of things. We have a number of new flavors of Protogen coming. We have a new Vegagen flavor. We have at least 2 new Macrogen flavors in the works. I think I'm going to do a limited release fall flavor as well in that. Maxogen, Dermogen, Somagen, collagen commodity. We started the POs on MorphoMulti and MorphoBiome, and put those on hold for the time being. We're going to tweak them a little bit. A combination of some new ideas that I've had, another new product that I'd like to develop, that I think can have some interplay there. Some supply chain issues, because the whole world is fucking burning down and nobody can get anything. So those are on hold right now, but I'm very excited for how they all kind of interplay together. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is a new product that I don't even have full quotes on yet. If we can make it, I think it'll be my favorite product. And it's because I've gotten into a much more longevity, health, wellness sort of vibe and mindset. I think about my children, I think about my dad, I think about my family members, and I think about, all these things. And I see certain ingredients popping up and getting a lot of traction from a research perspective, and there's some hype surrounding them. And I'm going, I don't know if anybody's ever made a very cohesive product with all this cool stuff in it. So I'm not going to get too much into detail into that, but yeah, so all the other stuff's coming. somewhere along the lines there. Yeah. What do you know? What do you want to know specifically? Ask me something specific, and I'll see.
I mean, no. I mean, I think that's good because the shadowed images you posted, most of them look like they're flavors, so that would address the proteins and whatnot that you were. How
Well,
close are we to the?
funny. Every time I release a teaser, or even when I did the MorphoBar teaser for Flavor 2 that we finalized, which is still quite a ways away, I blacked out the label, and all these people go, "Oh my gosh, he left the last 2 letters on the thing. I think it's this." I go, "I know, I did that on purpose." Like it's yes, I blacked the whole thing out. It's funny. It's obviously what it is. It's white chocolate macadamia nut. It's right there. It looks just like it. It says it right there. Let's just
Yeah,
cross that bridge. So
gotcha. Let's transition now to some training stuff. So obviously, bodybuilding, and we didn't get to touch on this the last time you were on the show, but I would like to delve into it a little bit with you now if you got time.
yeah, totally.
Right, and I'm not sure how close you follow the evidence-based hypertrophy research community with Dr. Mike Israetel and Lyle McDonald, Eric Helms, Eric Trexler, all those guys. Where do you fall on the whole volume versus intensity training thing? What is what did your own training consist of? What have you experimented with high volume training, lower volume training?
I've done everything.
What did you find? I guess you responded to best, or did it change over the course of your career?
To me, volume for the sake of volume without taking intensity into account or some sort of linear progression over time is absolutely worthless. You could do, and there was some research a couple years ago comparing German volume training 10 by 10 versus doing 5 by 10. Mm-hmm. And they showed that the 5 by 10 was better. And people were like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And the whole point was that if you're doing 10 by 10, which I think has utility, to it, it has the right application. How much of that is fatigue based and how much of that is just wasted time?
Right.
Do I think that one set to failure is enough? I don't know. I mean, look at what is minimum. The minimum amount still have a result, and then look at how much you can add to that as you need to. I think you should start with the minimum and then add as you need to go. But there has to be some sort of accumulation of stress over the course of time, or the system will not adapt. And overwhelmingly, the largest guys in the world are strong. Overwhelmingly.
Yeah, whether you're enhanced or not. Yeah.
The only times you ever see a giant who trains like a pussy is some genetic anomaly who, as soon as they get off the gear, they lose 100 pounds. Okay.
Right.
Everybody goes, oh, but Jay Cutler did a ton of volume and trained with pump. I'm like, that motherfucker was doing 405 inclines for sets of 12. Yeah, his volume was high because he built his work capacity up to there. If he was training for pure strength, could he do 500 pounds? Yes. But the point is that he wasn't doing 225 for 100 sets of 20. That's a fucking ridiculous amount of volume. You're not going to grow optimally beyond a certain point doing that. So I think the volume versus intensity debate is stupid, because you need the right amount of both, because volume without the right amount of relative percentage in with the true definition of intensity, not is worthless. It's absolutely worthless. And the maximum amount of intensity needed to elicit growth with no consideration to volume, because you're doing the bare minimum, I think is shortchanging what's in front of you. The best champions, drug-free, non-drug-free, they tend to do more volume, absolutely, but they're also very strong, and they also have a high work capacity. So there's a number of factors at play here that over the course of time, they just got awesome. I mean, think about that. They just got awesome at what they're doing. If you are not getting awesome at what you're doing, then you're not going to be awesome. Like, I just don't understand why there's so much debate on this. If you're trying to be the best you could possibly be, and all the greats have come before you doing, 4 exercises, 3 sets apiece, whatever, what makes you think that you're so special that you can go in there and do 2 total sets for a body part and maximize your results? You're not reinventing the wheel here. I mean, this is not like groundbreaking information. The whole training realm, I also think is a little bit boring, because there's not a lot of new, awesome stuff. They've known a lot of this stuff for a long time.
Right.
Yes, it can be tweaked. It can be, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, 1 time a week, blah, 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 right? And ultimately, if you look, the only common variable over the course of time is that the guys who have the best results are badasses. That's literally the only difference of all of them. So
Yeah.
that maybe that's what you should just focus on, is getting better at all of it.
Yeah. Striving for progressive
And
overload. Keep it
if you're not
simple.
getting better, then you're either training like a pussy or you're doing way too much and not recovering. And to find that middle ground between the two, I think, is the sweet spot that everybody needs to find on their own. And it's funny looking at, again, the greatest champions across, whatever. A large majority of them can't explain what they're doing. And that's not just training volume, training intensity, specific biomechanics, cheating or shitty form or fast reps or whatever the fuck. They don't have a clue. But they all kind of come to the same conclusion. If you watch them, they all have kind of very similar. Nobody's doing super slow negatives. Nobody's doing crazy full range of motion. Nobody's doing 2 sets crazy. Nobody's doing 100 sets. Like there's a little bit of success leads clues here, and the research tends to support, again, kind of this balance between the two.
What are your thoughts on ramping volume up as a means of progressive overload? So I know that's one of the popular ways of doing, like the guys at Renaissance Periodization do it, where maybe you'll start at your minimum effective volume and you go up to your maximum recoverable volume. Is that something you ever experimented with, or
Yeah.
is it better just to find, like, I know I grow really well with 14 sets per week. It may not be as my minimum effective might be 9 and my max recoverable might be 18, but 14 I'm still getting really good results. Do I need to ramp up volume, deload, and then start all the way back?
Yeah. I think it depends on how you define volume, right? Mm-hmm. Number of sets is very misleading. How are those sets done? Are they failure sets? Are they lead-in sets? Again, it's that 10 by 10 argument. How many of those sets are working sets and how many are not? All of them? 2 of them? Who knows, right? There are people that are like, yeah, I do 30 sets of body part. And you look at what they do, and they might do 8 sets of an exercise, but it's 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And then the last 3 sets are crazy, right? How many sets do they do? Is it 3 or is it 10 or is it 1? Who the fuck cares, right? Everybody's kind of doing the same thing. They're getting to a point that they can do this and do it well and progress on that. So from a volume perspective, adding volume isn't just adding sets. It could be adding it's adding stress to the system. That could mean load. You could do 5 sets of body part and add 5 pounds once a month for a year. Your volume goes up. People don't think that volume is not number of things that you do. It's the totality of everything that you do. Mm-hmm. It's also range of motion. It's also efficiency and bar speed, and it's all these sorts of things over the course of time that add up. So volume has to go up, because if it doesn't go up, that means you're not getting stronger, or that means you got a little stronger but you did less shit. Either way, it's dumb. Like,
yeah.
So and if you're going to add more sets, I think you not just need to do more sets. I think you need to do more of those sets and make them harder by going closer to failure, so that they cumulatively add up. Doing just more, it's like if I can do 3 sets of 10 of an exercise and very easily, and the next week I do 3 sets of 10 and 1 set of 1. That's an increase in volume, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
3 sets of 10, 1 set of 2. Well, that doesn't matter either. And at what point does it matter? It matters when the intensity is sufficient enough. And then once you have enough intensity, any sort of progress is going to lend itself to volume by way of a volume equation.
Perfect. Well put. Give us a little insight into what your training is now, because obviously you're busy most of the day, either with business or with family. So how do you finagle time to train in there?
Our training sucks right now. It sucks. I'll be honest. I put a lot into things, and I'm a very 100 or nothing sort of person. And self-care, especially probably the last 6 months for me, has been a problem. I have absolutely worked myself into the ground. COVID happened, so gyms were closed. Thankfully, we do have stuff here. But it got to the point that I was like, okay, well, I could either go downstairs and train legs right now, or I can answer these 100 emails. Fuck doing legs. I'm not getting on stage next year. And I would just skip it. And then the next day would come, and then there'd be a major problem with something, or something needed attention, or I'd have this creativity boost and be like, oh my God, I'm supposed to do arms. Man, I'm zoned in. I'm fucking doing arms. I'm going to do this. And for me, the last 6 months, my training has definitely taken a back seat. I still train several days a week, 3-4 days a week, but it's not like it ever used to be. I need to figure out kind of how that fits into stuff. Honestly, I kind of just don't give a shit. And that sounds really bad. At least right now, because I'm so hyper focused on what I'm doing that for me to take time for myself, I always struggle with that sort of thing. I give so much to what is in front of me that for me to sit back and go, oh God, I need to prepare a meal. I need to train. I need to go take a walk. I need to meditate. I need to do whatever. I'm very bad at doing that stuff. Very bad. And it's been something that now that Deidre's home, we've kind of kept each other accountable the last few weeks where we have been getting up and meditating together in the mornings because I know that I will not do it unless I'm held accountable. And when I do it, I notice a little bit a better ability to focus, and my blood pressure goes down a little bit, and these sorts of things that it's like this small, stupid thing that it should be easy to do that I'm just so wound up in this other shit. Again, the rocket ship, and she's the one that kind of balances me out. I still love training, and when I train, I still train very much. I'm less focused on the volume progression, on the numbers, and I'm more focused on what it feels like. At this point, am I going to shrink? Nope. Am I going to massively grow? Nope. So none of that matters to me. So I'm doing things that are fun. I'm doing things that feel good. I'm doing things that are efficient, and I don't want to say easy, but am I going in there and loading up? Taking an hour and loading up plates on a fucking machine. No, I'm not doing any of that shit. Like that's a waste of my time. It's not efficient because I'm not putting in the effort needed to maximize that thing. So,
right.
Can I still throw down? Fuck yes, I can. But is it a priority right now? No, it's not.
Gotcha. Let's transition to a few rapid fire things. And in closing here, favorite exercise, least favorite exercise?
Do you mean exercise modality in general or like a weight training exercise?
Let's do both. Since you countered with that, let's do both. Favorite training modality, and then favorite resistance training exercise, and least favorite.
Weight training in general. I'd say more specifically within that realm, I enjoy doing generally heavy stuff, and when applicable, I like doing drop sets after that. As opposed to just doing high rep type sets. Favorite exercise? Right now, nothing. We're looking over the course of years and years. I've always had a very good mind muscle connection with back training, with delt training, any posterior chain type stuff. I've always been really, really good at. I'd say my favorite thing that I've ever done over the course of time is probably barbell rows. I got really good at doing barbell rows. I could always, even after taking time off from doing them, within a month, I could be back up to my top numbers and go in there and do shit that everybody in the gym was like, what the fuck is this? And it was always kind of a cool thing to me. I don't do them a lot anymore, but yeah, I'd say probably barbell rows if I had to pick.
Flavor of a pre-work flavor do you despise more than any other flavor?
You broke up there real quick. Say that again.
What flavor of pre-workout will you never release? What is a flavor that you despise?
Fruit punch.
Fruit punch. Okay.
Fruit punch. Nope. Never doing it. Never doing it in anything. I think it's first of all, I can't stand fruit punch anything, and I think it is so plain and boring and a cop out. If you're going to create SKUs and create something awesome, like that just seems like such a fucking cop out. Fruit punch, like. That's about as neutral as it gets to me. I'll never do that. Never.
Gotcha. Daily caffeine intake.
Are we including caffeine-like compounds like a TeaCrine and Dynamine, or are we just including caffeine in and of itself?
Let's just do caffeine in and of itself.
Caffeine in and of itself. What's a typical day for me look like?
We got 400 in Alphagen, so we'll start the baseline.
There's only 200 in Alphagen because there's 100 TeaCrine and 100 Dynamine.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
In a day, we'll say 750, maybe. It's probably less than that. I do drink too many stuff like this out of convenience. My wife and I are both big. Diet pop fans. It's like I have like a graveyard of empty, pop cans over here. And if you're adding all this stuff up over the course of the day, does that add up? Absolutely does. Do I drink too much of that? Yeah, I guess it depends on who you ask. So,
sure. Do you ever struggle with creative burnout, and you know that you need to get shit done, but your mind is just like you're in this constant brain fog? And what tips can you give for people that struggle with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think taking yourself away from what the expectations are of something and allowing yourself to just ignore it for a brief period of time, I think is crucial for any number of things, whether that's training burnout, cognitive burnout. I mean, it's like my wife and I are fantastic together, but every now and then I just need a fucking day where I don't talk to her. Like, right? Like once a month, just like, I just need a day. Just get the fuck up.
Yep.
Just get out of here. Right. And everybody needs that sort of thing to kind of reset and reappreciate what they're doing, but also just have it be something that doesn't become a burden to them. I'm generally most days very cognitively aware of what's going on. I'm a very introspective person. I analyze and think very deeply about everything to the point that it's almost haunting at times. And sometimes it just gets so overwhelming and I'm just like, fuck this. And it's like, I'm going to go turn on some stupid movie and have a beer and just fucking relax and just fart around on my phone and something. You got to do something to just disconnect from whatever it's the expectation of what that is. Because for me, I feel so much pressure to do what I'm doing, and it's pressure that I've set upon myself. It's nobody else's pressure. Right. That I can forgive myself for taking that break and understand that when I come back, not only will I get it done, but I will probably be better as a result. That I can get behind taking that break.
Gotcha. Favorite beer? Or it can be a style of beer. It doesn't have to be porter, IPA.
So it depends on the context. So if I'm at home just having a beer, it's almost always a Corona. Or something similar to that. I always think about it from a very like crisp standpoint. Like I'm not going to sit here and enjoy a stout just chilling on the couch. It's a very heavy sort of experience, which I still enjoy that stuff. If I'm doing a meal, for me, I need a volume because I'm a heavy fluid guy. I'm constantly, I can't like sip anything. So if I'm out eating a burger or wings or whatever, right, I have to get like a wheat beer, like a citrusy wheat beer, something like a Blue Moon or a Hefeweizen or something. If I'm doing something as a treat, I'll do vanilla porter or something. I'd say more often than not, it's probably something crisp, something like a Corona. Way back, in my younger days, it was something like Rolling Rock, which is essentially like Sprite.
yeah, it's a super light beer.
That crisp sort of, refreshing sort of nature to it that it's not overwhelming in any sense, without being bland. It's like there's all these. Like the the White Claws and the Trulies and things. And those are okay every now and then. To me, those are a little bit too muted. Like I expect them to be sweet. I expect them to be something and they're just kind of like,
Yeah, I don't like, I've tried them a couple times.
That as much. Will I drink them if I need to? Yeah, I mean, sure, whatever. But that's not my go-to sort of thing. I guess it depends on the context. If I had to overwhelmingly pick one, it would almost likely be either a Corona or a Blue Moon.
Gotcha. Do you do any hard liquors?
Absolutely.
What would be your favorite of the poisons?
It depends on what I'm trying to do. So if I'm trying to drink socially with people to have one of those nights, it will almost always be like a Tito's and Diet Coke, or a Tito's and vanilla Coke or something. And for me, it's a combination of efficiency and getting the alcohol in me. And again, that crisp, the fluid, it's like, I can't just have like a glass of bourbon and sip on. I can't do that. Do I enjoy that every now and then? Yes, but that's not, for me, I can't control that. I'm going to drink the whole fucking thing. And this was a wasted experience for me. When I go to restaurants, when my wife and I go out to eat, I will almost always get 2 or 3 different cocktails off their menu that are something in-house and special just to try them. Something, whether it's fruity or spicy or whatever the fuck it is. I always try something different just to give it a whirl. But if I'm just making a drink just to drink, it's probably going to be like a vodka Diet Coke sort of thing.
Do you think drinking impairs muscle growth and recovery to any substantial extent, assuming you're consuming in moderation? So you may be between 1 to 3 drinks a day.
I think 3 is probably too much. Do I think 1 is detrimental? No. It depends on the person too. I'm upwards of 250 pounds. Is that going to affect me as much as my wife? Nope.
No.
but that's also not her goal either. So who cares? Um, Alcohol is a drug. It's a poison. It's one of the worst things you can consume. But life is meant to be lived, and there's a certain amount of risk and responsibility that can be mitigated in consuming it. And I'm not one to shy away from enjoying what life has put in front of me. Um, it If I was in prep, would I drink? Even if I counted the calories and macros, would I do that? Fuck no, I wouldn't. Because if you're trying to be a champion, why would you do anything? A champion doesn't try to get away with bullshit. They're trying to maximize what they're doing, regardless of what they could get away with. You know, and so even with, like, macro counting, could I eat ice cream every day the whole prep? Yes. Is that going to ultimately lead to the best end result? Likely not. And all the champions before me would likely agree. Success leaves clues. Am I going to do that in that context? Fuck no. But am I going to do that the rest of the year? Absolutely. Yeah.
Well put, man. All right, Ben. Thank you, sir, for joining us again. And in closing, this is the part where you can shamelessly plug everything and anything Morphogen Nutrition.
I hate plugging anything. So Morpho and Gen means create change. And I love that about what the brand means. But nobody can fucking say it or spell it. They can't spell it at all. And morphogennutrition.com is awful. And Ben at morphogennutrition.com, which is my email, is also awful. So years ago, we said, somebody years ago said, you guys are like starting like a takeover. We should get people to join the takeover. I was like, there it is. So we tell people, join the takeover at mntakeover.com. I'm Morphogen Ben on Instagram. We have a Morphogen Nutrition Instagram account that's managed by either me or one of my staff members. We're not super active on it, but we are slowly starting to grow that. The easiest way to get a hold of me is probably Instagram DMs or just shooting me an email. If you go to the website, you can submit a query on the email or, on the contact page, and it comes directly to me. I'm pretty good about answering emails relatively quick. On my direct Instagram account, I answer every fucking DM that I get. It's a lot, but I answer them. So yeah, hit me up.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for this, and continued successes for the rest of 2020 and beyond, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Bye.